The moment I saw my childhood bedroom stripped bare on my 22nd birthday, with my belongings scattered across the front lawn like debris from a tornado, I never imagined that this devastating betrayal would lead me to discover just how deeply my own parents had been stealing from me for years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the morning when I walked into what I thought was my family home, carrying celebration plans and graduation gifts, only to find 2 suitcases by the front door and an eviction notice with my name on it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The scent of vanilla candles and fresh coffee that usually made our Riverside Heights home feel welcoming was completely absent that July morning. Instead, the air carried an unfamiliar tension as I stood in the marble foyer of 1247 Maple Grove Drive, staring at luggage that definitely wasn't packed for a family vacation. The morning sunlight streaming through our cathedral windows illuminated, dust particles floating in the air, as if the very atmosphere of our house had been disturbed by something I couldn't yet understand. My name is Alexandra Morgan, though everyone calls me Alex, and until that Tuesday morning, I genuinely believed I was living the American dream that most 22-year-olds could only fantasize about. I had just graduated summa cum laude from Colorado State University with a degree in marketing and communications, landed my dream job at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions in downtown Denver, and was planning to spend the summer transitioning from college life to professional success while living in the comfort and security of my childhood home. Our house in Riverside Heights represented everything my parents had worked toward since I was born. The sprawling 6-bedroom colonial sat on 2 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds, complete with a swimming pool, tennis court, and 3-car garage that housed my father's BMW, my mother's Mercedes, and the Honda Civic they'd bought me for my 16th birthday. The gated community was home to Colorado's most successful families, where children grew up assuming that financial security and social status were simply facts of life rather than privileges to be earned. My father, Robert Morgan, had built Morgan & Associates Real Estate from a single-person operation into one of Colorado's most respected luxury property firms. At 52, he commanded respect in business circles and admiration from neighbors, who saw him as the embodiment of entrepreneurial success. He'd taught me about investment strategies since I was 12, explaining how real estate appreciation and smart financial planning would ensure our family's prosperity for generations. My mother, Linda Morgan, managed the social aspects of our elevated lifestyle with the skill of a professional diplomat. At 49, she served on the boards of 3 different charities, organized fundraising events that raised hundreds of thousands of dollars annually, and maintained the kind of social connections that opened doors throughout Denver's business and cultural communities. She'd spent years teaching me about networking, presentation, and the importance of maintaining relationships that could support both personal and professional advancement. Growing up in this environment, I'd learned to appreciate quality over quantity in everything from clothing to friendships. My parents had provided private school education, international travel, cultural experiences, and opportunities that most families could never afford. They'd also instilled in me a strong work ethic, emphasizing that privileges came with responsibilities and that success required both effort and strategic thinking. The past 4 years at Colorado State had been a perfect blend of academic achievement and social development. I'd maintained a 3.9 GPA while serving as president of the Marketing Students Association, completing internships at 2 different firms, and building a network of friends and professional contacts that would support my career advancement. My parents had visited campus regularly, attending parents' weekends and special events with obvious pride in my accomplishments. My relationship with David Chen had developed during my junior year, growing from study partnership to genuine romance, over 18 months of shared classes, campus activities, and family gatherings. David's parents owned a successful restaurant chain throughout Colorado, giving us similar backgrounds and complementary perspectives on business and family expectations. Our relationship felt like the foundation for a future that would combine personal happiness with professional success and social prominence. The job offer from Pinnacle Marketing Solutions had arrived in March, providing exactly the kind of entry-level position that could launch a successful career in corporate communications. The salary was competitive for a new graduate. The benefits package was comprehensive, and the company's client list included some of Colorado's most innovative businesses. My parents had celebrated the job offer with champagne and dinner at the country club, treating my professional success as validation of their investment in my education and development. My plan for the summer had been carefully structured to maximize my transition into professional life while maintaining the support systems that had contributed to my success. Living at home would allow me to save money while establishing my career, contribute to household expenses once my paychecks began, and spend quality time with family before eventually moving into my own apartment. The arrangement seemed beneficial for everyone, providing me with financial stability while giving my parents the satisfaction of continued involvement in my life. My younger sister Jessica was spending the summer studying abroad in Italy, part of her sophomore year program at the University of Colorado. Her absence made the house feel larger, but also more peaceful, eliminating the sibling dynamics that had sometimes created tension during family gatherings. I'd been looking forward to having focused time with my parents, rebuilding our adult relationship without the complications of managing Jessica's more dramatic personality and social requirements. The morning of July 15th had started normally, with my usual routine of coffee, exercise, and preparation for another day at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. I'd been working for 3 weeks, successfully completing my orientation period and beginning to contribute to client projects that utilized the skills I'd developed during college internships. My supervisor, Marcus Johnson, had expressed satisfaction with my performance and hinted that expanded responsibilities might be available sooner than typically expected for new hires. I'd planned to celebrate my birthday that evening with dinner at Rodriguez Family Bistro, followed by drinks with David and several college friends who lived in the Denver area. My parents had promised to join us for dinner, though they'd mentioned having a prior commitment that might require them to leave. Early, the celebration felt like a perfect bridge between my college social life and my emerging professional identity, combining family support with peer relationships and romantic partnership. The first sign that something was wrong came when I walked through the front door and immediately noticed the absence of the usual sounds and smells that characterized our family home. No classical music playing softly in the background, no coffee brewing in the kitchen, no sounds of my mother's morning phone calls with friends and business associates. The silence felt heavy and deliberate, as if the house itself was holding its breath in anticipation of something unpleasant. The suitcases sitting beside the front door were clearly mine, packed with clothing and personal items I recognized from my bedroom. They weren't travel luggage prepared for a surprise birthday, trip, or family vacation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. They were packed with the systematic efficiency of someone who had carefully sorted through my belongings and selected items for permanent removal. The sight of them created an immediate sense of displacement, as if I'd walked into the wrong house or stepped into someone else's crisis. My parents appeared in the foyer with expressions I'd never seen before, a combination of determination and discomfort that suggested they'd rehearsed this moment but weren't entirely comfortable with their chosen course of action. My father carried a manila folder thick with documents, while my mother held what appeared to be a prepared statement written on our family letterhead. Their coordinated appearance and formal demeanor felt like a business presentation rather than a family conversation. Alexandra, my father began, using my full name in the tone he reserved for serious discussions about grades, behavior, or major life decisions. Your mother and I have made a decision about your living situation that we believe is necessary for your personal development and our family's well-being. His voice carried the authority he used in business negotiations, suggesting that this conversation would be more directive than collaborative. The phrase personal development struck me as particularly strange, given that I'd just graduated with honors, secured employment, and been successfully managing adult responsibilities for several months. The reference to our family's well-being was even more confusing, since I couldn't identify any way that my presence in the house had been creating problems or conflicts that would require such dramatic intervention. My mother stepped forward with the document she'd been holding, her expression mixing what appeared to be genuine regret with resolute determination. "We've prepared a statement explaining our reasoning and the expectations we have for your future. Independence," she said, extending the papers toward me with the formality of a legal proceeding. "We believe this decision will ultimately benefit everyone involved." The documents felt substantial in my hands, suggesting detailed planning, rather than impulsive action. As I began reading, the words seemed to blur together in combinations that didn't make immediate sense. Phrases like failure to contribute meaningfully to household responsibilities, unrealistic expectations about ongoing financial support, and necessary transition to complete independence appeared throughout what read like a formal termination notice rather than a family communication. "We've determined that your continued residence in our home is preventing you from developing the self-reliance and financial responsibility that will be necessary for your long-term success," my father continued, his tone suggesting that this decision was based on objective analysis rather than emotional considerations. "Effective immediately, you'll need to find alternative housing arrangements that reflect your status as an adult with independent income." The timing of this announcement felt deliberately cruel, given that it was my birthday and I'd been planning to celebrate with family and friends. The fact that they'd waited until I'd started my new job suggested strategic thinking about my financial capacity to handle independent living expenses. The coordination between them indicated extensive discussion and planning that had occurred without any input from me or warning about their concerns. My immediate reaction was confusion rather than anger, as I struggled to understand how my parents had reached conclusions about my character and behavior that seemed completely disconnected from reality. I'd been contributing to household expenses since starting work, maintaining my own schedule and responsibilities, and generally operating as a respectful adult family member. The accusations in their statement didn't align with my understanding of my own behavior or our family dynamics. "I don't understand," I said, my voice carrying a tremor I hadn't expected. "What specifically have I done that's created problems? I've been paying for my own expenses, helping with household tasks, and managing my professional responsibilities without any issues. What failure are you referring to?" The questions emerged before I could consider whether challenging their decision was strategically wise or likely to improve the situation. My father's response revealed a level of frustration that suggested this conversation was going exactly as he'd anticipated, with resistance that he'd already decided was unreasonable. "This isn't a negotiation, Alexandra. This is a decision we've made based on months of observation and discussion. You've been taking advantage of our generosity without demonstrating genuine appreciation or meaningful contribution to our family's well-being." The phrase "taking advantage" hit me like a physical blow, suggesting that my parents viewed my presence in their home as exploitation rather than normal family support during a transitional period. The reference to months of observation implied that they'd been evaluating my behavior and finding it wanting without ever communicating their concerns or providing opportunities for improvement. My mother's contribution to the conversation carried a tone of patient explanation, as if she were helping me understand concepts that should have been obvious. "We've provided you with an excellent education, professional opportunities, and financial support throughout your life. It's time for you to demonstrate that you can succeed independently without relying on family resources that should be directed toward other priorities." The mention of other priorities was particularly puzzling, since I couldn't identify any family financial pressures or competing needs that would make my modest housing costs problematic. Our family's lifestyle suggested significant disposable income, and my own expenses were minimal compared to the costs of maintaining our house, cars, and social obligations. The suggestion that my presence was creating financial strain seemed inconsistent with observable evidence about our family's economic situation. As the conversation continued, it became clear that my parents had not only decided to remove me from their home, but had also prepared for the practical consequences of their decision. They'd researched apartment complexes in Denver that would accept tenants with my income level, identified moving services that could transport my belongings, and even prepared recommendations for furniture stores and household supply retailers that offered financing options for young professionals. The level of preparation was both impressive and deeply hurtful, demonstrating that they'd invested significant time and energy in planning my removal while maintaining normal family interactions and birthday celebration plans. The disconnect between their recent behavior and this dramatic announcement suggested either remarkable acting ability or a fundamental shift in their feelings about our family relationship that I hadn't detected. My belongings had been systematically packed not just with efficiency, but with obvious familiarity with my possessions and preferences. Clothing was folded according to my usual methods, books were packed in logical categories, and personal items were wrapped with care that suggested someone who understood their sentimental value. The packing had clearly been done by my mother, who knew my organizational systems and emotional attachments well enough to handle my possessions appropriately. They responded to my phone calls and text messages with brief statements reaffirming their commitment to my independence and their confidence that I would successfully adapt to adult responsibilities. Their tone suggested that any continued contact about housing or financial support would be viewed as evidence of the dependency issues they were trying to address. Jessica's reactions to our parents' decision, communicated through social media messages from Italy, were initially supportive of their tough love approach. Her comments suggested that she viewed my eviction as appropriate consequences for taking advantage of family generosity and failing to appreciate the privileges I'd been given. Her perspective felt like another betrayal, indicating that our parents had been discussing my supposed shortcomings with her for months before taking action. The social implications of my family situation began affecting my professional relationships and personal friendships in ways I hadn't anticipated. Colleagues who had met my parents during company events began asking about family dynamics and offering assistance that felt both helpful and embarrassing. The image of family stability and support that had been part of my professional identity was replaced by obvious struggle that made me appear less competent and reliable. Dr. Patricia Williams, a family therapist that David recommended, provided perspective on family dynamics and separation issues that helped me understand my parents' possible motivations while processing my own emotional responses. Her assessment that healthy family relationships require gradual transitions and mutual respect made my parents' approach seem increasingly problematic rather than tough but caring intervention they claimed it to be. The weekly therapy sessions became essential for maintaining emotional stability while managing the practical challenges of independent living. Dr. Williams helped me develop coping strategies for financial stress, family rejection, and professional pressure that were threatening to overwhelm my ability to function effectively. Her office became a safe space where I could express anger, hurt, and confusion without judgment or pressure to reconcile with family members who had abandoned me. My work performance began improving as I developed systems for managing personal stress separately from professional responsibilities. Marcus Johnson noticed my increased focus and resilience, commenting that the challenges I was facing seemed to be developing maturity and determination that enhanced my value as an employee. The crisis that had initially threatened my career was transforming into demonstration of character and capability that impressed supervisors and colleagues. The financial pressure of independent living forced me to develop budgeting and resource management skills that I'd never needed while living under family protection. Every purchase required careful consideration, every expense needed justification, and every financial decision carried consequences that would affect my ability to meet basic survival needs. The economic education I was receiving felt more valuable than anything I'd learned in college business courses. Maya's family embraced me with warmth that contrasted sharply with my own parents' rejection, providing emotional support and practical assistance that helped me navigate the transition to independence. Tom Rodriguez, Maya's father, offered part-time work at the restaurant that supplemented my income while providing flexible scheduling around my marketing job. The Rodriguez family's generosity highlighted the cruelty of my own parents' abandonment, while demonstrating that surrogate family relationships could provide support that biological relatives had withdrawn. The first month in my studio apartment passed with surprising adaptation and growing confidence in my ability to manage independent living successfully. The initial panic and overwhelming stress gradually settled into manageable routines that proved I could handle adult responsibilities without family support. The independence my parents claimed they were teaching me was developing naturally through necessity and determination rather than through their abandonment and rejection. My relationship with David deepened as we navigated the challenges together, with his steady support and practical assistance helping me maintain emotional stability during the most difficult period of my life. His family welcomed me with acceptance that filled some of the void left by my parents' rejection, providing social connections and emotional security that helped offset the isolation of family abandonment. The contrast between his family's inclusion and my parents' exclusion made their behavior seem increasingly abnormal and cruel. The birthday celebration that had been postponed due to my eviction was rescheduled for late August, transforming from family gathering into chosen family celebration, with David, Maya, and friends who had supported me through the crisis. The party at Rodriguez Family Bistro felt more authentic and meaningful than any previous celebration because it was based on genuine affection and mutual support rather than obligation and expectation. The professional opportunities at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions expanded as I demonstrated reliability and creativity despite personal challenges that could have derailed my performance. Marcus Johnson began assigning me to client projects that required independent judgment and creative problem-solving, indicating that my supervisors viewed me as capable of handling increased responsibility. The career development that my parents had supposedly supported through education was proceeding successfully without their involvement or approval. My growing confidence in independent living was accompanied by increasing curiosity about my parents' motivations for such dramatic action. The explanations they had provided continued to feel insufficient for the extremity of their response, particularly given my successful adaptation and lack of actual dependency issues. Something about their reasoning didn't align with observable evidence about my behavior or their own family values and relationship patterns. The financial documents I'd received during college for tax purposes and student aid applications began taking on new significance as I reviewed them while organizing my independent financial records. Discrepancies between reported income and lifestyle that I'd never questioned as a dependent became more noticeable as I developed understanding of actual costs for maintaining upper-middle-class living standards. The mathematics of our family's spending patterns didn't seem to align with the business income that supported our elevated lifestyle. Maya's background in accounting, part of her business major at Colorado State, provided perspective on financial analysis that helped me identify inconsistencies in my family's economic picture that had been invisible when I was focused on education and social activities. Her questions about trust funds, college savings accounts, and inheritance planning that most families discussed openly revealed that my parents had been unusually secretive about financial arrangements that should have been transparent family information. The conversation with Sarah Thompson, our family's financial advisor, that I scheduled to discuss my own retirement planning and investment strategies, provided disturbing insights into accounts and arrangements that I hadn't known existed. Her casual references to educational trusts and inheritance funds that should have been familiar to me revealed gaps in my knowledge about family financial planning that seemed deliberately maintained rather than accidentally overlooked. The legal consultation I arranged to understand my rights regarding family financial arrangements and potential inheritance issues provided information about account types and asset management that raised serious questions about my parents' handling of money that might legally belong to me. The attorney's surprise that I was unaware of certain financial instruments commonly used for children from wealthy families suggested that my parents had been withholding information about resources that should have been accessible, or at least disclosed. The investigation into my own financial background began casually as part of establishing independent credit and banking relationships, but quickly revealed evidence of accounts and transactions that I had never authorized or been informed about. Credit reports showed activity in my name dating back to my 18th birthday, including accounts that I had never opened and transactions that I had never approved. The discovery of unauthorized financial activity in my name was the first concrete evidence that my parents' behavior involved more than tough love or character building. The systematic review of financial records that Maya helped me conduct revealed a pattern of account management and asset manipulation that suggested sophisticated planning rather than recent decisions about independence and responsibility. The documentation showed years of financial activity in my name that I had never been informed about, indicating that my parents had been managing resources that legally belonged to me without my knowledge or consent. The consultation with Detective Lisa Park in the Financial Crimes Unit provided professional assessment of the evidence I had gathered about unauthorized account activity and possible identity theft by family members. Her evaluation that the pattern of financial manipulation suggested systematic theft rather than parental oversight indicated that my situation involved criminal activity rather than family conflict. The recommendation for formal investigation and potential prosecution transformed my understanding of my parents' motivations from misguided parenting to deliberate crime. The realization that my eviction from the family home had been designed to prevent me from discovering financial crimes rather than teach independence created a fundamental shift in my perspective about everything that had happened since my birthday. The loving parents who had supposedly prepared me for success were actually sophisticated thieves who had been stealing from me for years, using my trust and family loyalty to facilitate systematic fraud that could have continued indefinitely. If they hadn't felt threatened by my continued presence in their home, the evidence of financial theft that was emerging through careful investigation revealed the true scope of my parents' betrayal, extending far beyond family rejection to systematic criminal activity that had been ongoing since I reached legal majority. The comfortable lifestyle they had maintained, the luxurious vacations they had taken, and the elevated social status they enjoyed had been funded in part by money that legally belonged to me but had been diverted to their own use through sophisticated financial manipulation. The apartment that had initially felt like punishment for imaginary failures was becoming my headquarters for investigation and evidence gathering that would expose my parents' crimes and provide foundation for legal action. The independence they had forced upon me was developing into the strength and knowledge necessary to hold them accountable for systematic theft and fraud that they had never expected me to discover or have the resources to challenge. The birthday eviction that had seemed like the worst thing that could happen to me was actually the beginning of a journey that would reveal my own resilience, intelligence, and capacity for strategic thinking that my parents had underestimated. Their decision to remove me from their home had inadvertently provided me with the motivation and opportunity to uncover their criminal activity and begin building the case that would ultimately destroy their carefully constructed facade of respectability and success. The breakthrough came on a rainy September morning when I was sorting through old college documents and found a bank statement that had been mailed to my parents' address but forwarded to my apartment. The envelope contained information about an account I had never opened, showing regular deposits and withdrawals that totaled nearly $40,000 over the past year. The account number was completely unfamiliar, but the Social Security number matched mine perfectly, and the signature cards showed what appeared to be my handwriting authorizing transactions I had no memory of making. Maya was helping me organize financial paperwork when we discovered the statement, her accounting background immediately recognizing the significance of finding documentation for unauthorized accounts. Her questions about the deposit sources and withdrawal patterns revealed systematic movement of money that followed predictable schedules rather than random transactions. The regularity suggested ongoing financial management rather than isolated incidents of fraud, indicating that whoever was controlling this account had been operating it for extended periods with confidence about avoiding detection. The bank, branch manager Jennifer Martinez, was initially reluctant to discuss account details due to privacy regulations, but the combination of my identification, social security card, and obvious confusion about the account's existence convinced her that something irregular was occurring. Her review of the account history revealed that it had been opened with my personal information, but had been managed entirely through online banking from IP addresses that traced back to my parents' home and business locations. The signature cards for the account showed handwriting that resembled mine, but included subtle differences that became obvious when compared to my actual signature on recent documents. The forged signatures were sophisticated enough to pass casual inspection, but showed systematic variations that indicated they had been created by someone with access to examples of my writing, but without my actual participation in the account. Opening process. The evidence suggested identity theft by people who knew me well enough to replicate my personal information and writing style convincingly. Jennifer's investigation into the account's transaction history revealed connections to other financial instruments that should have required my direct authorization and participation. The unauthorized account was receiving regular transfers from educational trust funds that had been established when I was a minor, suggesting that my parents had maintained control over resources that should have been transferred to my direct management when I reached legal majority. The systematic diversion of trust fund money explained how they had been able to maintain their expensive lifestyle while claiming that family resources were being directed toward my education and development. The discovery of multiple unauthorized accounts led to a comprehensive audit of my financial identity that revealed the stunning scope of my parents' systematic theft. Credit cards had been opened in my name and used for purchases that benefited my parents rather than me, including payments for home improvements, luxury travel, and investment purchases that appeared on my credit history but had never been disclosed to me. The accumulated debt in my name totaled over $120,000, destroying my credit rating and creating financial obligations that could have affected me for decades. The legal consultation with attorney Rebecca Walsh provided professional assessment of the evidence and guidance about my options for addressing what was clearly systematic financial fraud committed by family members. Her evaluation that the pattern of unauthorized accounts and forged signatures constituted multiple felonies indicated that my parents had committed crimes serious enough to warrant federal prosecution. The systematic nature of the theft, combined with the sophisticated methods used to avoid detection, suggested premeditation and criminal intent that went far beyond family financial mismanagement. Rebecca's investigation into my family's business records revealed additional evidence of financial manipulation that extended beyond simple identity theft. Morgan and Associates Real Estate had been using my credit profile to secure business loans and lines of credit that provided operating capital for real estate investments while transferring the debt obligation to my personal accounts. My credit history showed responsibility for business debts that I had never known existed, creating personal liability for commercial ventures that had generated profits exclusively for my parents' benefit. The trust fund documentation that Rebecca subpoenaed revealed that substantial educational savings had been established by my grandparents with specific instructions about my access to the funds upon reaching certain age milestones. The accounts should have been transferred to my direct control when I turned 21, providing resources for graduate education, professional development, and initial career establishment. Instead, my parents had maintained control over the funds and systematically transferred money to accounts they managed without my knowledge or authorization. The inheritance records showed that my grandfather's estate had included specific provisions for educational support that should have provided nearly $200,000 for my college expenses and early career development. Instead of using these funds for their intended purposes, My parents had diverted the money to support their own lifestyle, while allowing me to accumulate student loan debt that could have been avoided entirely. The psychological manipulation of making me feel grateful for their financial support was particularly cruel, given that they were spending money that legally belonged to me, while claiming generosity for providing basic parental responsibilities. The forensic accounting that Rebecca arranged revealed connections between my unauthorized accounts and my parents' business operations that showed sophisticated money laundering designed to hide the source and destination of stolen funds. Real estate transactions had been structured to move money through multiple accounts in ways that made detection difficult for anyone not specifically looking for evidence of fraud. The complexity of the financial manipulation indicated that my parents had been planning and executing this theft for years with professional-level understanding of banking regulations and detection avoidance strategies. David's reaction to the scope of financial crimes that was emerging was a mixture of outrage and admiration for my methodical approach to investigation and evidence gathering. His family's business background helped him understand the complexity of the fraud, while his personal loyalty provided emotional support during the devastating process of discovering that my parents had been stealing from me since I reached legal majority. His steady presence became essential for maintaining emotional stability while processing the magnitude of betrayal that extended far beyond birthday eviction to systematic criminal enterprise. The private investigator that Rebecca recommended, Detective Mike Harrison, was a former FBI agent who specialized in family financial fraud cases. His investigation into my parents' asset holdings revealed lifestyle expenditures that far exceeded their legitimate business income, including the Aspen vacation home, luxury vehicles, and country club memberships that had been purchased with money diverted from my trust funds and unauthorized credit accounts. The documented evidence of their elevated lifestyle supported by stolen money provided compelling proof of their criminal intent and systematic theft. Mike's surveillance of my parents' daily activities revealed behavior patterns that suggested ongoing financial crimes rather than past mistakes that had been corrected. Regular visits to banks and financial institutions indicated continued management of complex account structures, while their maintenance of expensive lifestyles suggested confidence that their income sources would continue despite my absence from their home. Their behavior showed no indication of guilt or concern about potential discovery, suggesting that they viewed their theft as permanently successful rather than temporarily hidden. The investigation into Jessica's financial arrangements revealed that my parents had been establishing similar unauthorized accounts in her name, indicating that their criminal activity extended beyond theft, from me to systematic fraud against both their children. The discovery that my sister was also being victimized by our parents' financial crimes changed my understanding of family dynamics and provided additional evidence of their willingness to exploit family relationships for personal financial gain. Jessica's supportive comments about my eviction took on new meaning when viewed as evidence that she was unaware of her own victimization by the same criminal enterprise. The consultation with IRS investigators revealed that my parents had been claiming tax deductions and credits based on educational expenses that had been paid with money stolen from my trust funds rather than their own resources. The tax fraud compounded the identity theft and created federal criminal exposure that could result in significant prison sentences for both parents. The systematic nature of their tax evasion indicated sophisticated understanding of financial regulations and deliberate criminal intent rather than accidental mistakes or poor record-keeping. The evidence-gathering process was emotionally devastating, but also professionally educational, providing insights into financial crime detection and prevention that enhanced my understanding of business operations and regulatory compliance. The skills I was developing for investigating and documenting my parents' crimes were directly applicable to my work at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, where I was beginning to specialize in financial services marketing that required deep understanding of banking regulations and fraud prevention measures. Marcus Johnson's support during this period was crucial for maintaining professional performance while managing the stress of family criminal investigation. His decision to involve me in projects related to financial compliance and fraud detection felt like recognition of my developing expertise, while providing practical applications for the knowledge I was gaining through personal necessity. The crisis that had initially threatened my career was developing into specialized professional competency that distinguished me from other junior employees. The therapeutic work with Dr. Patricia Williams took on new dimensions as we processed the revelation that my parents' rejection had been motivated by criminal guilt rather than parental concern. The birthday eviction was revealed as an attempt to prevent discovery of financial crimes rather than lesson about independence, transforming my understanding of their motivations and my own emotional responses. The healing process became focused on recovering from systematic betrayal and criminal victimization, rather than working through family conflict and communication problems. The planning for legal action required careful coordination between criminal prosecution and civil recovery proceedings to maximize both punishment for my parents and restitution for the money they had stolen. Rebecca's strategy involved cooperation with federal prosecutors while simultaneously pursuing civil litigation that would recover assets and provide compensation for damages that extended beyond simple theft to include credit destruction, emotional trauma, and professional interference. Caused by their criminal activity, the evidence collection reached a critical mass in early October, when Mike's investigation revealed that my parents were planning to liquidate remaining trust fund assets and transfer the proceeds to offshore accounts that would be difficult for law enforcement to trace or recover. The urgency of preventing additional theft required immediate legal action to freeze accounts and preserve evidence before my parents could complete their exit strategy and disappear with all remaining stolen money. The decision to move forward with criminal prosecution required careful consideration of family relationships and social consequences, but the evidence of ongoing crimes and planned asset disappearance made immediate action necessary to prevent further theft and protect Jessica from continued victimization. The moment had arrived to transform months of investigation and evidence gathering into legal action that would expose my parents' crimes and provide foundation for justice and recovery. The preliminary steps for asset seizure and criminal charges were scheduled for the following week, providing time for final evidence review and strategic planning, while maintaining the appearance of normal family relationships to prevent my parents from detecting the investigation. The careful balance between maintaining operational security and gathering additional evidence required precise timing and coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies and legal professionals. The transformation from family rejection victim to criminal investigation coordinator had developed capabilities and knowledge that I never could have imagined possessing 6 months earlier. The skills I had gained for financial analysis, legal research, and evidence documentation were directly applicable to professional advancement while providing personal empowerment that transcended the immediate goal of prosecuting my parents' crimes. The independence they had forced upon me was developing into strength they had never anticipated and definitely had not intended to create. The country club of Riverside Heights had never looked more elegant than it did on the evening of October 15th, exactly 3 months after my birthday eviction. The annual Fall Charity Gala drew Colorado's most prominent families for an evening of fundraising, networking, and social display that represented everything my parents valued about their elevated status in the community. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over women in designer gowns and men in custom tuxedos, creating the perfect backdrop for what would become the most dramatic reversal of fortune in Riverside Heights social history. I had purchased my ticket to the gala using money from my emergency fund, viewing the expense as an investment in justice rather than social entertainment. The black cocktail dress I wore was borrowed from Maya, whose elegant taste and similar size provided appropriate attire for an event where appearance would be crucial for credibility and impact. My hair was styled in a professional updo that projected confidence and sophistication, while my makeup was carefully applied to convey seriousness and determination rather than vulnerability or distress. The small evening purse I carried contained carefully organized documentation that represented 3 months of intensive investigation and evidence gathering. Each document had been selected for maximum impact, arranged in sequence that would tell the story of systematic financial fraud with undeniable clarity. The weight of the folder felt substantial against my hip, a physical reminder of the ammunition I had spent weeks preparing for this moment of public revelation and justice. Rebecca Walsh had initially argued against public confrontation, preferring formal legal proceedings that would provide more controlled environment for presenting evidence and ensuring appropriate legal protections. However, the discovery that my parents were planning to liquidate remaining assets and potentially flee to non-extradition countries made immediate action necessary to prevent their escape and preserve evidence. The charity gala provided an opportunity to freeze their assets through public exposure while ensuring that their entire social network witnessed their criminal behavior. David accompanied me to the event, his presence providing both emotional support and additional credibility as witness to the revelations that would unfold. His family's prominence in Denver business circles meant that his observations would carry weight with other attendees, while his unwavering loyalty provided strength for facing the most challenging confrontation of my life. His black tuxedo and confident demeanor helped us blend seamlessly into the sophisticated crowd while preparing for the dramatic transformation that would shock everyone present. Maya had coordinated with Detective Mike Harrison to ensure that law enforcement personnel were positioned nearby to provide immediate response if my parents attempted to flee or destroy evidence. The careful timing of the confrontation was designed to maximize impact, while minimizing opportunities for my parents to avoid consequences or manipulate the situation through their usual charm and social connections. Every detail had been planned, with precision to ensure that truth would emerge clearly and justice would be swift. My parents arrived at the gala with their usual social grace. My father resplendent in a custom tuxedo that had cost more than my monthly rent, my mother glittering in diamond jewelry that represented money stolen from my trust funds. They moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting compliments and congratulations from friends who viewed them as successful business leaders and devoted community members. Their comfortable confidence demonstrated that they had no awareness of the investigation that had been building around them, or the evidence that would soon destroy their carefully constructed reputation. The sight of them enjoying luxury purchased with stolen money while I struggled with basic living expenses created a surge of righteous anger that strengthened my resolve for the confrontation ahead. Every smile they shared with friends, every casual display of wealth, every moment of social prominence was built on criminal activity that had devastated my financial future and emotional well-being. The justice they were about to face felt not just deserved, but essential for protecting other potential victims and restoring balance to a situation that had been fundamentally corrupt. Jessica had returned from Italy the previous week, her study abroad program completed just in time for the fall social season. Her presence at the gala added complexity to the situation, as she remained unaware of our parents' crimes and her own victimization by their financial manipulation. The decision to proceed with public revelation despite her presence was difficult but necessary, as delaying action would allow our parents additional time to steal money and potentially escape legal consequences. The cocktail hour provided opportunities for casual observation of my parents' behavior and social interactions that revealed their complete confidence about avoiding detection or consequences for their criminal activity. They discussed family matters with friends who expressed sympathy about my apparent independence issues, accepting praise for their tough love approach to parenting while maintaining the narrative that my eviction had been necessary for my personal development. Their willingness to continue manipulating social perception even after committing systematic theft demonstrated the depth of their narcissism and criminal thinking. Sarah Thompson, our family financial advisor, was present at the gala in her professional capacity as representative of her investment firm's charitable foundation. Her attendance provided perfect opportunity for presenting evidence to someone with professional expertise in financial management and fiduciary responsibility. Her knowledge of my family's accounts and my parents' claims about educational expenses would make her an ideal witness to the discrepancies between their representations and documented reality. The dinner program included recognition of community, leaders, and charitable contributors, with my parents scheduled to receive an award for their philanthropic efforts supporting educational initiatives. The irony of honoring them for educational charity while they had been stealing educational funds from their own children was almost too perfect to believe. Their acceptance of recognition for generosity while committing systematic theft represented the ultimate expression of their hypocrisy and criminal arrogance. The moment for revelation came during the silent auction preview, when the crowd was gathered in the main ballroom, examining donated items and socializing in smaller groups that would provide ideal setting for intimate but public presentation of evidence. The lighting was bright enough for document review. The atmosphere was relaxed enough for serious conversation, and the audience was diverse enough to ensure rapid spreading of information throughout the community. My approach to Sarah Thompson was casual but purposeful, beginning with normal social pleasantries before transitioning to serious discussion about financial irregularities that required professional assessment. Her initial surprise at seeing me at the gala quickly transformed into professional concern as I began explaining the evidence I had gathered about unauthorized accounts and systematic theft of trust fund money. Her expertise made her immediately recognize the significance of the documentation I was presenting. The first document Sarah examined was the forensic accounting report that detailed unauthorized transfers from my educational trust funds, showing systematic movement of money that should have been under my direct control after my 21st birthday. Her eyebrows rose as she processed the implications of finding evidence that fiduciary responsibilities had been violated and trust fund assets had been diverted for personal use by the designated trustees. Her professional training made her immediately understand the legal and ethical violations represented by the evidence. "Alex, this documentation suggests serious breaches of fiduciary duty and possible criminal fraud," Sarah said, her voice carrying the authority of someone whose professional opinion carried significant weight in financial matters. The systematic nature of these transfers indicates deliberate criminal activity rather than accounting errors or misunderstandings about trust fund management. Her assessment provided immediate validation for the evidence while establishing the criminal nature of my parents' actions for anyone within hearing distance. The conversation quickly attracted attention from other guests who recognized the serious nature of our discussion and began gathering to understand what was being revealed. Word spread rapidly through the ballroom that something significant was happening, with people gravitating toward our location to witness what appeared to be a developing crisis involving prominent community members. The elegant social atmosphere began shifting toward focused attention on unfolding drama that no one had anticipated. My father noticed the gathering crowd and began moving in our direction with the confident demeanor of someone accustomed to managing social situations through charm and authority. His approach was smooth and practiced, suggesting that he viewed the situation as manageable through his usual combination of personality and social connections. He had no awareness that the evidence being presented was comprehensive enough to destroy his reputation and freedom regardless of his persuasive abilities. "Alexandra, what a surprise to see you here," my father said, his voice carrying the warm but slightly condescending tone he used for public interactions with family members. "I hope you're enjoying the evening and connecting with people who can support your professional development." His comment was designed to reinforce the narrative about my independence, while subtly suggesting that my presence at the gala was inappropriate given my supposed financial limitations. "Actually, Dad, I'm here to discuss some financial irregularities that Sarah has been helping me understand," I replied, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surge that accompanied this moment of direct confrontation. "It seems there have been some unauthorized activities involving my trust funds and credit accounts that require immediate attention." The formal language was deliberate, establishing the serious nature of the accusations while maintaining the professional tone appropriate for the setting. My father's expression flickered with what might have been concern, but he quickly recovered with the dismissive confidence that had characterized his response to my previous attempts to discuss family financial matters. "I'm sure any confusion can be resolved through proper channels rather than public discussion at social events," he suggested, his tone implying that my approach was inappropriate and potentially embarrassing for everyone involved. His response demonstrated his continued belief that social pressure and parental authority could control the situation. Sarah's intervention was swift and authoritative, her professional credentials providing credibility that my father couldn't dismiss as easily as he had been dismissing my concerns. Bob, the documentation Alex has provided indicates systematic, unauthorized access to protected trust fund assets and identity theft involving credit accounts opened without her knowledge or consent, she said, her clinical tone making the accusations sound like official financial analysis rather than family drama. The word unauthorized attracted immediate attention from nearby guests who understood the implications of professional accusations about financial impropriety. Conversations around us quieted as people realized they were witnessing something far more serious than typical family disagreement. The elegant social atmosphere was transforming into focused attention on developing crisis that threatened to expose criminal behavior in their midst. My mother appeared beside my father with the graceful timing that had made them effective social partners for decades. Her elegant gown and confident demeanor suggested that she viewed the situation as manageable through their usual combination of charm and social manipulation. Her presence was designed to present united front while utilizing her social connections, to control narrative and minimize potential damage to their reputation. Alex, sweetheart, perhaps this isn't the appropriate venue for discussing family financial arrangements, my mother suggested, her voice carrying the patient reasonableness she used for managing potentially embarrassing social situations. These matters are often more complex than they initially appear, and public discussion can create misunderstandings that are difficult to correct. Her response demonstrated her belief that social pressure and family dynamics could still control my behavior and prevent full disclosure. The gathering crowd included several financial professionals who understood the significance of Sarah's assessment and began asking questions about the specific nature of the alleged irregularities. Their professional interest transformed the situation from family drama into community concern about potential criminal activity affecting prominent local residents. The social dynamics that my parents had always used to their advantage were turning against them as their reputation became liability rather than asset. Detective Lisa Park arrived during the growing confrontation, her presence adding official, law enforcement credibility to the accusations being discussed. Her timing was perfect, providing immediate authority for the evidence being presented while ensuring that any attempts by my parents to flee or destroy evidence would be prevented. Her professional demeanor made it clear that criminal investigation was underway rather than simple family conflict resolution. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, I'm Detective Park with the Denver Police Financial Crimes Unit, she announced, her badge clearly visible as she approached my parents with official authority. We've been investigating allegations of identity theft and fraudulent account management, and we need to discuss some irregularities that have been brought to our attention. Her formal introduction transformed the social gathering into crime scene, where my parents were officially suspects rather than respected community members. The crowd's reaction was immediate and dramatic as guests realized they were witnessing the arrest of people they had considered friends and community leaders. Gasps and whispered conversations spread throughout the ballroom as the elegant charity gala became the setting for public exposure of systematic financial crimes. The social event that should have celebrated my parents' community standing instead became the venue for their dramatic downfall. My father's attempt to maintain control through social authority failed completely when confronted with official law enforcement presence and professional financial analysis that confirmed criminal activity. His usual confidence evaporated as he realized that charm and connections couldn't overcome documented evidence and official investigation. The powerful businessman who had controlled every aspect of my life was revealed as common criminal, whose sophisticated theft had finally been exposed. There must be some misunderstanding, my mother said, her voice beginning to show strain, as the reality of their situation became clear. We've always managed Alex's financial affairs with her best interests in mind, and any irregularities must be accounting errors that can be easily resolved. Her desperate attempt to maintain innocence was undermined by the comprehensive evidence that had already been presented to professional witnesses. Detective Park's response was swift and definitive, her professional authority making it clear that the evidence was sufficient for immediate action. "Ma'am, we have documentation of systematic unauthorized account access, forged signatures, and fraudulent credit applications that constitute multiple felonies," she explained, her tone leaving no room for negotiation or alternative explanations. "You both need to come with me for questioning regarding these allegations." The handcuffs appeared with shocking suddenness, transforming my parents from elegant gala attendees into criminal suspects in front of the entire social elite of Riverside Heights. The metallic clicking sound seemed to echo through the suddenly silent ballroom as guests witnessed the arrest of people they had respected and admired for years. The dramatic reversal of fortune was complete and irreversible, destroying their reputation as thoroughly as they had attempted to destroy my financial future. Jessica's shock at witnessing our parents' arrest was profound and heartbreaking, her confusion evident as she struggled to understand how the family she trusted had been revealed as criminal enterprise. Her immediate concern was for our parents' well-being rather than their victims, demonstrating how effectively they had manipulated family dynamics to maintain loyalty despite their criminal behavior. Her reaction highlighted the broader impact of their crimes on family relationships and trust. The crowd's response ranged from shock to outrage as guests processed the implications of learning that prominent community members had been systematically stealing from their own children. Comments about the sophistication of the fraud and the violation of family trust created immediate social consensus that my parents' behavior was beyond acceptable boundaries, even for wealthy families with complex financial arrangements. Their reputation was destroyed as completely as my credit rating had been by their criminal activity. The evening that should have celebrated charitable giving and community spirit instead became a cautionary tale about family financial abuse and the importance of protecting vulnerable family members from sophisticated predators. The elegant setting that my parents had used to display their wealth and status became the backdrop for their complete social and legal destruction. The poetic justice was as perfect as it was dramatic, with their own social connections witnessing their downfall and ensuring that their criminal behavior would be permanently remembered by everyone who had once respected them. The criminal trial of Robert and Linda Morgan began 6 months after their dramatic arrest at the charity gala, with media coverage that transformed our family's private betrayal into a cautionary tale about financial abuse and parental exploitation. The courthouse in downtown Denver was packed with journalists, financial professionals, and community members who had followed the case since the shocking revelations at the country club of Riverside Heights. The prosecution's case was built on the comprehensive evidence I had gathered, creating an airtight demonstration of systematic theft that left no room for reasonable doubt about my parents' criminal intent. Federal prosecutor Maria Santos presented the charges with methodical precision that highlighted the sophistication of my parents' criminal enterprise. Identity theft, wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion were just the beginning of a 17-count indictment that detailed years of systematic financial abuse against both Jessica and me. The evidence included forged documents, unauthorized account transfers, fraudulent credit applications, and tax returns that claimed deductions for educational expenses paid with stolen trust fund money. Each charge carried potential prison sentences that could result in decades of incarceration for both defendants. Rebecca Walsh's civil litigation proceeded parallel to the criminal prosecution, seeking recovery of stolen assets and compensation for damages that extended far beyond simple theft. The civil case documented the destruction of my credit rating, the emotional trauma of family betrayal, and the professional interference caused by financial instability during my early career development. The comprehensive approach ensured that criminal punishment would be accompanied by financial restitution that would restore my economic position and provide foundation for rebuilding my life. The forensic accounting testimony revealed the staggering scope of my parents' theft, with expert witnesses documenting over $400,000 in unauthorized transfers and fraudulent account activity spanning nearly 4 years. The systematic nature of the crimes demonstrated sophisticated planning and criminal intent that went far beyond momentary lapses in judgment or family financial mismanagement. Each transaction showed careful attention to avoiding detection while maximizing personal benefit from stolen resources. Jessica's testimony as a prosecution witness was emotionally devastating, but legally crucial for establishing the pattern of systematic family financial abuse. Her discovery that our parents had opened credit accounts in her name and accumulated debt that threatened her own financial future provided additional evidence of their willingness to exploit family relationships for personal gain. Her courage in testifying against our parents despite the emotional cost demonstrated the strength she had developed through surviving their manipulation and betrayal. The defense strategy attempted to portray my parents as loving family members who had made mistakes in managing complex financial arrangements rather than criminals who had systematically stolen from their children. Their attorneys argued that trust fund management was complicated and that any irregularities represented accounting errors rather than deliberate theft. However, the evidence of forged signatures, false tax returns, and hidden offshore accounts made their claims of innocent mistakes completely unconvincing to the jury. My victim impact statement during the sentencing phase provided opportunity to articulate the full scope of damage caused by my parents' crimes, extending far beyond financial theft to fundamental destruction of family trust and emotional security. The betrayal had affected every aspect of my life, from professional relationships to romantic partnerships, creating ongoing challenges that would require years to fully resolve. The statement helped the court understand that the consequences of financial abuse extended far beyond monetary damages to include psychological trauma that would affect me permanently. The judge's sentencing reflected the serious nature of the crimes and the sophisticated planning that had made detection difficult for years. My father received 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation, while my mother received 10 years in prison with similar probation requirements. The sentences sent a clear message that family financial abuse would be prosecuted as seriously as crimes committed against strangers, and that family relationships provided no protection for systematic criminal behavior. The asset forfeiture proceedings resulted in recovery of most stolen money, along with additional compensation from the sale of assets purchased with fraudulent funds. The Aspen vacation home, luxury vehicles, jewelry, and art collections were liquidated to provide restitution that exceeded the amount of documented theft. The recovery process was emotionally satisfying because it required my parents to surrender the lifestyle enhancements they had purchased with money stolen from their children. The criminal convictions resulted in immediate social consequences that extended throughout Riverside Heights and the broader Denver business community. Morgan & Associates Real Estate was dissolved after clients terminated relationships, and professional associations expelled my father from membership organizations. The social circle that had admired my parents for their wealth and generosity now understood that their elevated lifestyle had been built on systematic theft from their own children. Jessica's recovery from our parents' financial abuse was complicated by her emotional attachment to family relationships that had provided security despite underlying criminal activity. Her therapy with Dr. Patricia Williams focused on processing the betrayal while developing independent financial management skills that would protect her from future manipulation. Her strength in testifying against our parents eventually developed into advocacy for other young adults facing family financial exploitation. The professional recognition I received for my investigation and evidence gathering led to consulting opportunities with law enforcement agencies and financial institutions, seeking to improve detection of family financial abuse. The skills I had developed for documenting systematic theft and presenting evidence effectively were directly applicable to fraud prevention and investigation work that became a specialized focus of my career development. The crisis that had initially threatened my professional future became the foundation for expertise that distinguished me in competitive markets. My relationship with David deepened through the challenges of family criminal prosecution and media attention that followed the high-profile case. His unwavering support during the most difficult period of my life demonstrated the foundation of trust and mutual respect that became the basis for our engagement and eventual marriage. Our wedding celebration included Maya, Dr. Williams, Rebecca, Walsh, and other chosen family members who had supported me through the investigation and recovery process. The Truth and Justice Foundation that I established with recovered assets from my parents' criminal activity focused on education about family financial abuse and support for young adults facing exploitation by relatives who used family relationships to facilitate theft. The foundation's work included professional training for financial institutions, legal advocacy for victims of family crimes, and public education about protecting vulnerable family members from sophisticated predators who exploit trust and love for criminal purposes. The media coverage of my parents' case sparked broader conversations about family financial abuse and the need for stronger protections for young adults whose parents manage their financial affairs. Legislative reforms were introduced to require independent oversight of large trust funds and mandatory disclosure of account activity to beneficiaries who reached legal majority. The changes would prevent future cases of systematic theft by ensuring that young adults had access to information about their own financial resources. The therapeutic work that continued for years after the criminal convictions focused on rebuilding my capacity for trust, while maintaining appropriate caution about financial relationships. Dr. Williams helped me develop frameworks for distinguishing between healthy family support and manipulative control, while building confidence in my own judgment about people's motivations and intentions. The healing process was ongoing, but ultimately strengthened my ability to form authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than dependency or obligation. Marcus Johnson's mentorship during my recovery from family trauma contributed significantly to my professional advancement and career development. His recognition of my resilience and analytical capabilities led to promotions that accelerated my progress within Pinnacle Marketing Solutions while providing leadership opportunities that utilized my experience with crisis management and strategic thinking. The professional success that emerged from surviving family betrayal exceeded anything I could have achieved through traditional career advancement. The speaking engagements that followed my parents' convictions provided platforms for educating other young adults about recognizing and responding to family financial exploitation. The presentations combined practical advice about protecting personal financial information with broader insights about maintaining independence while navigating complex family relationships. The advocacy work transformed my personal trauma into resources that could help prevent similar victimization of other vulnerable family members. The relationship I eventually developed with Jessica evolved into mutual support and shared commitment to preventing family financial abuse through education and advocacy. Our joint efforts to process our parents' betrayal while building independent lives demonstrated that family relationships could survive even systematic criminal behavior when based on honesty and mutual respect rather than dependency and control. Our collaboration became a model for other siblings recovering from family financial exploitation. The financial independence that resulted from asset recovery and career advancement provided security that was more meaningful than the comfortable lifestyle I had enjoyed while living under my parents' support. The knowledge that my resources were legitimate and self-generated created confidence that could never be threatened by other people's criminal behavior or manipulative intentions. The independence my parents had claimed to be teaching through eviction was ultimately achieved through surviving their betrayal and building success on foundations of integrity and hard work. The annual scholarship program that I established at Colorado State University provided educational support for students whose family financial resources had been compromised by abuse or exploitation. The scholarships honored the memory of my grandfather whose trust fund had been stolen while creating opportunities for other young adults to achieve educational goals despite family financial trauma. The program transformed my personal experience of theft into ongoing support for future generations of students. The country club membership that I eventually obtained through my own professional success provided opportunities to attend social events in the same venues where my parents had been arrested and their crimes exposed. The symbolic return to settings, where justice had been served, felt like completion of the journey from victim to survivor to advocate. The elegant surroundings that had once represented my family's stolen prosperity now reflected my own legitimate achievements and contributions to community welfare. The parole hearings that occurred after my parents had served minimum required sentences provided opportunities to present victim impact statements that emphasized the ongoing consequences of their crimes and the need for continued supervision. The testimony highlighted their continued lack of remorse and failure to acknowledge the full scope of damage caused by their systematic theft and betrayal. Both parole applications were denied based on insufficient evidence of rehabilitation and genuine acceptance of responsibility for their criminal behavior. The financial literacy programs that became a focus of my foundation's work provided education for teenagers and young adults about protecting themselves from family financial exploitation while maintaining healthy relationships with relatives who might have access to their personal information. The curriculum combined practical knowledge about account security with broader insights about recognizing manipulation and maintaining appropriate boundaries in family relationships. The marriage that David and I built was characterized by complete financial transparency and shared decision-making that provided security based on mutual trust rather than dependency or control. Our relationship demonstrated that intimate partnerships could thrive when built on foundations of respect and honesty rather than power dynamics and financial manipulation. The contrast with my parents' criminal marriage highlighted the importance of integrity in creating relationships that could withstand external pressures and challenges. The professional recognition that culminated in my appointment as Director of Financial Crimes Prevention at a major Denver bank represented the transformation of personal trauma into specialized expertise that protected other potential victims. The position utilized my experience with family financial abuse while providing resources for developing innovative detection and prevention strategies. The career advancement that emerged from surviving systematic betrayal exceeded any opportunities that would have been available through traditional family support and networking. The final satisfaction came 10 years after my birthday eviction, when I received notice that my parents were applying for early release based on claims of rehabilitation and acceptance of responsibility for their crimes. The victim impact statement I submitted to the parole board detailed the ongoing consequences of their systematic theft, while emphasizing their continued refusal to acknowledge the full scope of damage they had caused. The parole applications were denied again, ensuring that they would serve their complete sentences as acknowledgement of the seriousness of family financial abuse. Standing in my own home office, surrounded by awards for fraud prevention work, letters from scholarship recipients, and photographs from my wedding and foundation events, I realized that the devastating betrayal that had begun with birthday eviction had ultimately led to a life of purpose and achievement that exceeded anything I could have imagined during my privileged but sheltered youth. The parents who had tried to destroy my financial future through systematic theft had inadvertently provided me with motivation and expertise that became foundations for professional success and community contribution. The independence that my parents had claimed to be teaching through cruel eviction was ultimately achieved through surviving their betrayal and building success on foundations of integrity, hard work, and commitment to protecting other potential victims. The comfortable life they had stolen from me was replaced by meaningful work that transformed personal trauma into ongoing protection for vulnerable individuals facing similar exploitation. The lesson they had tried to teach about self-reliance became reality through defeating their criminal enterprise and reclaiming control over my own financial future. The woman who had been systematically robbed by the people who were supposed to protect her most became someone who could recognize financial predators immediately and help others avoid similar victimization. The family that had raised me to trust authority figures while remaining vulnerable to manipulation was replaced by chosen family relationships based on mutual respect and shared commitment to honesty and integrity. The fairy tale childhood that had been built on stolen money was transformed into authentic adulthood that provided security through legitimate achievement and genuine relationships. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. The sight of my childhood bedroom, completely stripped of everything that had made it mine for over a decade, created a sense of displacement that went beyond simple relocation. The room where I'd done homework, talked on the phone with friends, planned for college, and dreamed about my future had been transformed into an anonymous space that could have belonged to anyone. The speed and thoroughness of the transformation suggested preparation that had been occurring while I was at work, adding deception to the betrayal. Looking at my packed belongings and empty bedroom, I realized that my parents hadn't just decided to ask me to move out. They'd executed a complete removal of my presence from their home and lives, eliminating every trace of my childhood and young adult years with systematic efficiency. The message was clear. I was no longer welcome in the space where I'd grown up, and my transition to independence would be immediate and non-negotiable. The practical implications of their decision hit me with overwhelming force as I stood in our foyer surrounded by suitcases and facing parents who seemed like strangers. I needed to find apartment housing immediately, arrange for moving services, and establish a completely independent living situation within days, rather than the months I'd planned for gradual transition. The financial pressure would be significant, requiring security deposits, utility connections, and furniture purchases that would consume most of my savings and potentially require credit arrangements I hadn't anticipated needing. More devastating than the practical challenges was the emotional reality that my parents had fundamentally redefined our relationship without warning or discussion. The people who had raised me, supported my education, and celebrated my achievements had decided that my continued presence in their lives was unwelcome burden rather than source of joy and pride. The betrayal felt complete and irreversible, suggesting that everything I'd believed about our family bonds had been based on misunderstanding or deliberate deception. As I loaded my belongings into my Honda Civic, making multiple trips between the house and car while my parents watched from the front windows, I couldn't shake the feeling that this dramatic change had been motivated by factors they hadn't disclosed. The explanation about independence and responsibility felt insufficient to justify such extreme action, particularly given the timing and method of their announcement. Something else was driving their decision, something they weren't willing to discuss or acknowledge. The drive away from 1247 Maple Grove Drive felt like leaving my entire identity behind, rather than simply changing addresses. The house that had represented security, success, and family love was disappearing in my rearview mirror, taking with it assumptions about my future that had guided every major decision I'd made throughout college and early career planning. The life I'd been building was collapsing, and I had no idea whether recovery was possible or what form it might take. What I didn't know as I drove toward downtown Denver with everything I owned packed into my small car was that my parents' decision to remove me from their home was connected to financial arrangements they'd been making without my knowledge for years. The birthday eviction that felt like cruel punishment for imaginary failures was actually the first step in a systematic plan to eliminate my access to resources that legally belonged to me. The family that had raised me to value honesty and integrity was about to reveal themselves as sophisticated thieves who had been stealing from me since I turned 18, and my removal from their home was designed to prevent me from discovering the scope of their crimes. But I wouldn't learn the truth about their motivations for several more weeks, and when I did, it would transform my understanding of everything I thought I knew about family, trust, and the people who were supposed to protect me most. the loving. Parents who had supposedly prepared me for success were actually the greatest threat to my financial future, and the independence they claimed to be teaching me would become the foundation for exposing their betrayal and reclaiming what they had stolen. The comfortable life I thought I was losing was about to be replaced by something far more valuable. The knowledge of who I really was when stripped of family support, and the strength to fight back against people who had underestimated my intelligence, determination, and capacity for strategic thinking. My parents had made the mistake of assuming that the daughter they'd raised to be successful and resourceful would be helpless when turned against them. They were about to learn just how wrong they had been. The furnished studio apartment I found in downtown Denver felt like a prison cell compared to my childhood bedroom, but it was all I could afford on 3 weeks' notice, with the security deposit wiping out most of my savings. The building on 14th Street catered to young professionals who needed temporary housing, offering month-to-month leases that came with a premium price for the flexibility. My 5th-floor unit overlooked a parking garage and featured a Murphy bed, kitchenette, and bathroom that could have fit inside my parents' walk-in closet. Maya Rodriguez had been my roommate at Colorado State for 2 years, and her response to my frantic phone call about needing emergency housing was immediate and unwavering support. Within hours of my eviction, she'd driven from Fort Collins to help me move my belongings and provided a couch to sleep on while I searched for permanent housing. Her family's restaurant, Rodriguez Family Bistro, became my temporary headquarters for apartment hunting, job transition planning, and emotional processing of what felt like complete family abandonment. The practical challenges of independent living hit me with devastating force during my first week in the studio apartment. Utility deposits, grocery shopping, laundry arrangements, and transportation logistics that I'd never considered suddenly required constant attention and careful budgeting. The monthly rent consumed 60% of my take-home pay from Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, leaving minimal resources for food, clothing, and emergency expenses that seemed to emerge daily. My parents' explanation about teaching independence through immediate self-reliance began to feel increasingly hollow as I struggled with basic survival tasks they'd shielded me from throughout my privileged upbringing. The lessons about financial responsibility they claimed to be providing felt more like punishment designed to prove their point about my supposed inability to function without family support. Every challenge I encountered seemed to validate their narrative about my dependence and immaturity. Marcus Johnson, my supervisor at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, noticed the stress immediately when I returned to work after my birthday weekend. My usual enthusiasm and attention to detail were compromised by exhaustion from apartment hunting, moving logistics, and emotional turmoil from family rejection. The professional image I'd been building during my first month was deteriorating. Under personal pressures I couldn't compartmentalize effectively. The financial reality of independent living became more daunting as I calculated monthly expenses against my entry-level salary. Health insurance premiums, car payments, student loan obligations, and basic living costs exceeded my income by several $100s monthly. The comfortable financial cushion I'd planned to build while living at home was replaced by immediate scarcity that threatened my ability to maintain professional appearance and performance standards. David's support during this crisis was unwavering, but his family's wealth made it difficult for him to understand the genuine financial pressure I was experiencing. His suggestions about borrowing money or asking relatives for assistance felt disconnected from my reality of having no family resources available and no established credit history that would qualify me for reasonable loan terms. The class differences between us, previously irrelevant, suddenly felt like barriers to emotional connection and practical understanding. My attempts to contact my parents in hopes of discussing their decision and possibly negotiating some compromise were met with polite but firm rejection.